Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Well Vegan Travel podcast.
It's very fun to be on something that I've listened to before.
Oh, how fun. That's awesome. So, listeners, Amy joined us in our second Japan trip in March, bridging over into
Mhm.
April in 2024. And she has kindly agreed to come on the podcast to share a little bit about the experience. So, before I start asking you questions and getting your opinion on things, Amy, where are you from?
So we live in Seattle now. I'm from Seattle, but I lived on the East Coast quite a bit. Oh, I'm sorry. My parrot just joined us.
Okay, so those listening on the podcast, a parrot just jumped on Amy's head. That was not something I was expecting.
Sorry, she gets very excited when I'm on video calls. There you go, Mojo. Yeah, so yeah, we're animal lovers. They sit on us during video calls. So I live in Seattle now, where I'm a real estate agent. My husband's a creative director, and I used to be an actress on the East Coast, and my husband was a theater director. Now we're in Seattle. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm already learning things about you that I didn't know. Normally, I would know all of this about our travelers, but you were on the second Japan trip, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, I was not able to attend the second Japan trip because I had a poorly cat at home. So, yeah, I'm just pleased I'm getting to know you a little bit more now.
We were bummed not to have you. Seb did a great job, but a little something was missing.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So let's talk about Japan. What inspired you to go to Japan?
So Japan, so my husband and I have always had each had like a primary place always wanted to go to. I always wanted to go to the Amazon. So we went to the Amazon last February. Then we had planned on going to Japan, say, for his 60th birthday, some years down the road. But I went to a meetup with you guys in Seattle. Funnily enough, I was told about it from someone I met on the Brazil trip, and Colleen was going to be there. So, and I had followed Colleen. I had once talked with you over the web, like a couple of years ago, about doing a tour with you guys. And I was like, oh, this restaurant's right down the road. So I went down there and I just had such a lovely time chatting with Colleen, and I liked the people there. And Leland had always wanted to go to Japan. It was going to be during cherry blossom season, and it started on his birthday. I had a good vibe from everyone who was there because the temperature of the people that you're traveling with is very important. It's a bit of the roll of the dice, but if you could generally get a feeling for the type of person who'd be on it. So I knew that you guys had very special high-end tours. And I was like, I don't want to be spoiled like that for a while because I know I can't ever go on another tour except theirs. And I was like, okay, we're going to get spoiled because it was his birthday. He'd been going through a hard time, and we're going to do his bucket list. So that was why. That was what made us pull the trigger for that trip that time. Yeah, I was 99% there, but I was like, all right, let's do the cherry blossom.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. This was Leland's sort of like bucket list trip.
Mhm.
What were his expectations, and yours for that matter, about Japan before going there? I mean, he must have had it sort of on a pedestal if he really wanted to go there.
He did. And I don't know that we can speak in terms of expectations. In fact, I do know he's a deep lover of design and disciplined design. And the whole sensibility of Japan, being very creative and artistic and careful, is very much him. So he wanted the art, he wanted the design, he liked the ritualistic nature of how Japanese culture goes along. And yeah, the art and design primarily. With me, I don't know. Like, it's funny. I didn't have a particular draw to Japan. I just figured it would be interesting and to show me beauty that I hadn't thought of. I knew I would enjoy it and get something out of it. So, did that answer your question?
It really did.
Enough.
It really
Okay.
did. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. So, was the experience for Leland what he expected in terms of, having the opportunity to appreciate good design and the mentality of Japanese people and all of that?
It was I knew he had high hopes. I don't know of any specific expectations, but I knew it was really important to him. And he turned to me and he said, it was even better than I thought it would be. Like, it made me cry because it was so, one of the beauties of this trip was how much it meant to him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And how much you guys took care of us meant that we could indulge in the fun parts and not get wrapped up in logistics. You know, we could outsource that to you and all the things that would irk me. You know?
yes, it's so funny that you should say that because the logistics were a challenge for sure. I don't want to explain too much how the vegan sausage was made, but
I can just
for the 4
imagine.
months before, it was unlike anything we've ever done.
I can believe that. So, well, I don't know what went into that vegan Japanese sausage. I just know that a lot must have. And Leland and I kept turning to each other going, oh my God, this must have been a lot of work. But to you guys' credit, there's always a smile on the face and no strain, because it is sort of a job putting a tour together, right? It's the big smile on the face while you're furiously paddling underneath the water. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm curious to know if there were any aspects of Japan or the tour, either which one, that really surprised you, either in a positive or a negative way. I've got a couple that I can share as well about my experience in Japan, but you go.
Yeah. So I tend to travel with a fairly open mind. So I have a broad idea of Japan. I mean, living in Japan, in Seattle, there's a fair amount of Asian culture. Not so much Japan, but a fair amount of Asian culture. So nothing exactly surprised me from what little I knew about it, but there were things that were elevated. First of all, just the ritualistic way of greeting, which is so consistent. Like, it's never a special thing. It is just always how you hand the business card. It is always how you bow. It's not a put on. It is part and parcel of the DNA. So that struck me. Actually, a lot of young women walking around dressed alike.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I started noticing like on the second day. Actually, I didn't have to use chopsticks as much as I thought I would. There were actually a lot of Western, and I didn't know if that was just because we were in a lot of touristy areas. I thought I would actually have to use them all the time. And they were often just provided there. And they're not exactly innovators, but they hone in on doing certain things very well. That does stand out when you ask for something slightly different. And suddenly the whole machine comes to a breaking stop. You're like, oh my God, am I in trouble? Because I always want to be at least a respect. I know I'm going to be a goofy tourist. That's just what I am. But I want to be a respectful goofy tourist, right? I don't mind looking dumb as long as I'm not rude. I was often just very aware of how ham-handed I might be. And because things are so ritualistic and precise, I often was a little nervous. Not that anyone would have said anything bad. And I'm sure people gave me, a lot of latitude I didn't expect, but still, I didn't want to be jerky. Anyway, I want to hear what you had to say to that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely, there's a lot of etiquette to follow, and that can be surprising. I'm connecting with what you said there in terms of, I'm sure I did faux pas very often. And sometimes I would get the hint, but sometimes not. So that can feel a little stressful, I guess. Am I just like really offending someone right now? But I think some really positive things that I really love about Japan is, and everyone's going to say that the toilets, of course. I don't even care so much about the toilets so much. Like, I'm not into the bidets so much.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate public toilets everywhere. I do appreciate them being clean. And something that I still think is amazing is that how well they seem to, I don't have a visual impairments, but how well they have accessibility for visual impaired people. That is incredible. Yeah. And just going back to the toilets for a second, they have, like, if you go into the public toilets, there's a public toilet in every single subway station, which blows my mind. And in train stations, they have a little platform that comes down so that you can take your shoes off and stand on it so that you can get changed
Oh, I
without having to
noticed
stand
that.
on the gross floor, which really isn't that gross anyway. Just might blows my mind. Just blows my mind about Japan.
It's thoughtful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
One
Go
thing that
ahead.
did surprise me a little bit was less English was spoken than I thought would be in certain areas. Like I expect in certain rural areas, certain older people, yeah, but I was a little surprised considering that Japanese isn't widely spoken across the world. It's not like Spanish or English or French or Portuguese where there are colonies all over the world. How do you talk to someone from Sweden? It's not because I'm American and I'm special. It's just sort of the international language.
Yeah.
So that surprised me. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I'm just thinking about something else that really surprised me as well.
Yeah.
When Seb and I were in Japan in January, I think it was, we were in Shirakawa-go, that
Uh-huh.
little town outside of Kanazawa, the village,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was snowing. So we pulled into the car park, and there were some buses there. There weren't that many people, and it was snowing. And somebody was actually snow shoveling the parking lines so that the buses and cars would be able to park with more precision, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to see the lines. That just blew my mind too. Anyway.
It's really on brand. It's really on brand, though.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the tour, maybe.
Yeah.
What was the most memorable part of the tour for you?
As a general thing, just all of it. Like that's someplace, a lot of what we think about when we go on a tour is like, we're going to do a 10-day tour. And then down the road, we'll come back for 3 weeks because we've had the little Whitman sampler of all these places. I'm like, I don't really need to go back there, but I'd really like to explore this place for a longer period of time. So Miyajima is one of those. Hiroshima, our one afternoon was, both meaningful, it being Hiroshima and having just seen Oppenheimer, but also because of our tour guide who had learned English by watching Monty Python. It's hard to describe what a Hiroshima tour by a guy speaking Monty Python would be like. You just have to experience that tour guide. The restaurant, the Shoji Ryori barrier, the Kanazawa, that was very meaningful. It was very meaningful for Leland. And I think in a way, you almost have to, before you go in, I almost feel like the group almost needs to shift down because it's a different experience. I'll just say experiencing it from the outside. So you go in, it's a very aesthetic, beautifully arranged place. And then you go into this long windowless black room and you sit on the floor and everyone has a spotlight on their tray. It's like a contemplative dungeon in a good way. I mean, Leland was blown away when often you're sitting on the floor, how they serve is by scooting along on the floor. And with this place, they brought you these towers, which had separate bowls. It looks like a science experiment, but a beaker, a vessel that has candle underneath and it's heated up, and they bring you the bowl sat in front of you, and then you pour out this broth. And it's very beautifully ritualized in the way that it's spotlit. It's like you're really not supposed to be distracted by all the other stuff going on. It's really about paying attention to this. So that was just remarkable visually. And of course, the food was wonderful, but visually, and it put you in a different place too from the rest of the world. Also, I did the tea ceremony, which I have
Yeah.
almost a comedy routine about because I've reenacted it for other people.
I would love to know more about Miyajima because I didn't know about Miyajima before we started researching Japan. So I'm guessing I'm not the only one that doesn't know about this little place.
Yeah, the shrines, and then going up to that shrine up on the hill. It felt like everywhere I turned, there was another shrine, another temple. But that one little underground place that you walk through, it's supposed to symbolize rebirth. I tried to look that up. That was really wild, but I want to read more about that. That was really cool. And then on the way leading up to some of the shrines and temples, all those little guys with the little beanies. Boy, do I sound like a tourist now, don't I? But I want to look at every one of their faces with all their individual personality. I was told along the way what everything symbolized. At a certain point, I was like, I'm going to take pictures and absorb them even more later. And then that unfinished home castle. There's just a lot going on in Miyajima. There was just a lot I wanted to sit and watch and check it. And it was just visually very beautiful. I mean, cherry blossoms at that time. And then there was some group that had some Yorkie festival or some Yorkie group. They were pushing around little Yorkies in a stroller. I don't think that's part of Miyajima. It just happened to be one thing that kind of distracted me. I was like, what's all these dogs in the strollers?
Oh my goodness, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And I just thought Kanazawa was a beautifully designed city. That's what struck me. Now, we're only seeing tiny little bits of these places. So I don't know how much it is better designed than any other city, but it seemed to me like just a very aesthetic city, even more than other places, or that we got to see, I should say.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you. I'm wondering whether there was any new Japanese style of food that you would never experienced before that was really fun and tasty.
Not everything was always labeled, or the name didn't stick in my head because I don't speak Japanese. And, so it doesn't kind of stick in the same way that maybe a European word might. I would say, well, I did like onomaki. How do you say it?
Okonomiyaki?
There you go. I can only manage 3 syllables of Japanese, and then I give up. So
that is a 6-syllable word. It is quite hard.
So that was delightful. I really like fresh food, and sometimes there were ingredients. So there's like a green pepper leaf that I saw on a number of little dishes, and it has a distinct taste just unto itself, and it isn't, a cooked dish. I was stunned at how many little dishes we had in so many of our meals. Like, it kind of just kept coming and coming and coming. Everything was delightful because it was fairly vegetable forward, which I appreciate. You can have vegan without being vegetable forward. So really appreciate that. Gosh, I think everything was great. There was one I didn't care for. There was like a tofu. And actually, there were a number of things that had a softer consistency that didn't work for me. And that's really common, right? A lot of people are like, it's not that the taste is bad. There's just a softer consistency that doesn't do it for me. Mm-hmm. And then one of those was Leland's favorite,
Right,
yeah. So, yeah, I can't give you specifics. I thought it was all pretty wonderful.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. I'm remembering in the kaisaki at the geisha night, the dessert there. I don't know whether you recall this one. It sticks out in my mind. It's like these sort of clear jellies. It's very strange texture, but I don't care for it hugely. But there were lots of other lovely things that I did like.
I think I took pictures of that menu because I kind of couldn't believe how much stuff was in there. It was unbelievable. Yeah, I like the sweets. It's probably the savory that I liked the most.
Okay. One thing that people love or don't like about traveling on a group tour is the fact that you're traveling with other people, and it's not always as flexible as it could be. So how was it for you traveling with a group, and how was the group dynamic generally?
I felt like the group dynamic was good. And, part of the reason I wanted to go on a vegan tour is that it does up the chances that we may have certain values in common. Not that we're all the same, but maybe we may regard the world in a certain way that's kind of conducive to getting along easily. I felt like the group was great, and it felt like there were 3 types of people. There are like a little group of more boisterous people, which obviously I was one of. And then there are people who are like quieter, who didn't need to be around the boisterous people all the time. Didn't dislike them, but they're like a little off in that corner. It's just need a calmer table. And then there are people who are a little more in the middle. But everyone seemed to get along quite well. And it's true. I would say the hardest part about being on a tour with other people, at least because I felt like we got along great with everyone. In fact, there was one guy, Leland, and he just became BFF. So that's why we're going to Croatia next year. So hi, Steve. You did it. You got Croatia. So super fun. The hardest part about traveling with other people is that by necessity, you have to be more rigid in a schedule, because the bigger the group, the more it's important that you're organized and you're at a place, even if you love each other. Let's say that it's 24 people who adore each other. It's more the strictness of the schedule and the lack of the flexibility, which is just a necessity. You just have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why it can be good, being on a group tour rather than a group of friends that one person's organizing it, because at
Uh-huh.
least the tour leaders are the bad guys that are
Exactly.
making you get up early, and it's not a member of the family or anything.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
I hate to task, but yeah, it's definitely true. There's not so much flexibility. But yeah, I didn't get to experience the group dynamic with your group. Seb said you were all amazing. So that's awesome. We have our WhatsApp group that occasionally, from time to time, people are saying something in our Japan to WhatsApp group. Have you stayed in connection with anyone, or maybe Leland has, since the trip finished by any chance?
We have actually Chris and Chuck came to visit their kids, and we had Japanese food with them a week ago.
Oh,
And
how lovely.
yeah, they'll be in Croatia. And then Steve and Leland definitely have stayed in touch. And people have just pinged in the WhatsApp group. I mean, we're kind of spread across the US, but we're excited to see them again. Like,
Amazing.
yeah. I actually did the philosopher's path, which ended up me just walking along with Colleen and David. It was a beautiful day. And I ended up, don't hate me, people, but I ended up getting to sit and have a glass of wine with Colleen and David by myself. First of all, just having a rest is really nice. The environment was really nice. I'm a big fangirl of Colleen. Love her very much, both as a thinker and as a person. So that was special. And actually, partly because Leland was off drinking sake or something. So
Oh, he did the sake tour?
he did the sake tour. It was fun. And then the next day, I think he did the ramen. And then I did the tea ceremony.
Fantastic.
Have you done the tea ceremony?
No.
So this tourist went in thinking that I could sit back and someone would come in with a tray and tea and tell me some history or something like that. Right? Oh, get in there. And this little woman put the kimono on me, and I'm like, hello? And I was like, boy, that's tight. So all I can say is stand straight. That's the only English. Okay. So we all sit, and I'm kind of trying to stay straight in the kimono, which is less comfortable than it looks. They're very pretty, though. And it was Leanne and Chris and another Chris. And so we go into the tea room, which is, small room where it's a half door where everyone has to scoot in. And from what we are told, that's to make everyone even, whether they're an emperor or a lowly commoner. You go in, I felt very like, oh, don't mess anything up. And then you go in, we had an interpreter for us, and she instructs you to look at the piece of art that's been chosen for this event. You look at it, there's this feeling of something special. Like that's one of the great things about Japanese culture is that it's part and parcel of the culture to stop and notice things. And I loved that. That was beautiful. It's not something I do naturally. So we all sat around this little pit that had a kettle in it. Then the tea maker comes in and she demonstrates how this tea is made. Then we're told we're going to each have to make it ourselves. And because there's each step, and I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm going to remember this. You have to hold it this way and turn it this way, which is a fun thing to watch. But I'm like, there's no way I'm going to remember all of these steps. Warm or bowl this way, turn it that way, scoop it that way, do this, da da. And I am a bull in a china shop as a human
Same.
being. And I can watch and appreciate someone else doing that. But I was terrified of screwing the whole thing up. Thank God Leanne went first. And she's doing it and she's swirl it around and do it right. And she's being told, do it faster. And she's like, I'm a lefty. And I'm getting stressed out about it. So I scoot over and I do it. I'm trying to pick it up exactly right. and do it okay. Of course, no one's grading me. No one's going to tell me I'm rude, but I'm still feeling I'm going to do it wrong. So anyway, and then I was like, don't let your kimono spill open. And I'm like, I can't help it. This lady put it on me. You know? And so then all four of us do it. And I'm a wreck by the end of this. You know, and I am like this. Afterwards, I'm splayed out with a glass of wine going, that tea ceremony, you have no idea. I was like, you don't even know. And I reenacted it in charades, but I remembered it. And then I was watching Shogun. I think it might be the penultimate episode. A character does a tea ceremony. He's a samurai for his wife as a gift, as a show of love to her.
Okay.
And I was like, I know how to do that. And kind of actually understand the steps. And I was like, oh, there are lots of steps you didn't do. I could do those steps. That was kind of fun to somewhat understand something. And because it was fun to watch Shogun at the same time. TV show, but they made a great effort to be culturally relevant and sensitive. So that was a nice overlap to do. That's the thing that really stuck out with me. The thing that I had to be the most active at, and actually I was slightly stressed out about.
At your comfort
in my
zone,
memory.
for sure. Amazing. If you were talking to someone who was thinking about doing this tour in the future, what tips or recommendations would you give them?
I'm trying to think if there's anything specific to Japan. I mean, like any tour, bring comfortable clothes. And in Japan that you can slip off. Ask Bridie what toiletries you don't need to bring because you provide some. I had packed some and I was like, oh, I could just use Bridie's because it's very cool that you provide those. I felt like we got completely our money's worth and more. I felt very spoiled. And it's just, try to rest up as much as you can. You guys pack in a lot.
Yes, definitely. The next trip will be a little bit chiller now that we've done it all and we can readjust things a little bit. But it's always this fine balance of wanting to make sure that people have the best, fullest experience, but also not, exhausted. So there's that line that we try to meet. But, I think for most of the time we get it okay. But Japan definitely was a lot. And of course, there were so many crowds as well, and traffic was a little heavier, and that's it slows things down a little bit in terms of cuts into rest time.
I was astounded at how on time actually you guys were. We waited for a bus once for 5 minutes. When you're managing that many people doing that many things, and you guys were also great about telling us, the night beforehand and warning us of things that are coming next. Even if you don't have to do anything psychologically, getting your head around something is really important. It helps a lot. I don't know. It's just go. It's delightful. It's wonderful. It's great.
Fun. And you're going to come to Croatia. That's so cool also. That's great.
I am. And I think we've decided to tag on other cities on either end. I think Istanbul might be one. So how I want you guys to go to Turkey.
Yes.
So this is my press for you guys to go to Turkey. So I'll do a little reconnaissance. Not that you asked me to. It's just
always love to hear suggestions.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I mean, the nice thing about being on a cruise too is you don't pack them on back.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. So I'll share my thoughts as well. So Amy, sushi or ramen?
Oh, that's a tough one. Today I'm feeling sushi. I'm feeling sushi.
Okay, for me, I like both, obviously. But a good ramen is something that I really, really enjoy, for sure.
Yeah.
What about green tea or a matcha latte kind of thing? So a green tea would be a regular green tea without the milk and made out of tea. And matcha is, of course, the pulverized powder in a hot oat milk or
something. I'm not sure I've ever had a matcha latte.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll have to find out later.
Yeah, okay. Well, I love matcha lattes
Uh-huh.
personally, but I also like green tea. All right. What about Hiroshima okonomiyaki or Tokyo okonomiyaki?
I think Tokyo was a little lighter, right? Am I
It was
right?
lighter and it didn't have noodles, I don't think, inside. The Hiroshima one had
Yeah.
noodles in there.
Oh, I remember that one. I made mine look like a QR code. I
Ah,
remember. Sorry. Everyone else had to do theirs round, and I did. I think I like the Tokyo one. It was a little lighter. I think that suited me. And I think I was in the minority. I think other
okay.
people like the Hiroshima one.
Yeah, I really like the Hiroshima one.
Yeah.
They're both great. They're both
Yeah.
great. And I love the Hiroshima one with the taking over the restaurant and being
Yeah.
able to sit in front of the guy doing all of the
Yeah.
cooking. I don't know whether you were on that table, but it's a lot of fun.
Oh, pro tip on that. I always, when I travel, carry around a fan ever since I got stuck in Italy during a heat wave. So I just always carry around a fan because you never know. It was really fun. I loved making it, but boy, was I warm. So,
Yeah,
fan.
and air conditioning is not a big thing in Japan at all.
Yeah.
I have one last one for you. So, bento box or kaiseki meal. Kaiseki, in case you have forgotten, is like the geisha style, the geisha meal with all of those very involved long courses and that rice done that particular kind of way with the lotus seeds in. And then, of course, there was the bento box that we had on the train. So, which do you prefer?
Really the geisha, but it just feels like it's for different environments. One is when you're traveling, one is when you need to, do things quickly, and the geisha one is when probably that's not the official name, geisha one, but that's when you have time to pay attention and take a long time. And that's charming.
The Shibuya crossing or the bamboo forest in Arashiyama?
Shibuya, hands down. One thing that's very calming about their society is because it's so ritualized and everything, and it's so communally minded that you can kind of relax into it, and that you know that people will be polite even if they don't like you. And that's sort of nice. You know that they will behave in a certain way. You know that
Yeah,
there's a communal arrangement where you do feel less worried about someone being a jerk or there being crime or stuff like that. That's very different for very individualist American. It has its downsides, but it's also very nice to be amongst for a little while.
it
Very
is. It
calming.
is. For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. All right, Amy, I want to thank you so much for taking the time on a Friday evening for chatting with me. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Bridie. You guys do great work.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.